Alice's Garden Fun by MagnusMagneto, commissioned by Coms. Like he did every Saturday during the summer, Jeff looked out the window, watching his wife Alice water plants in the garden. She almost always wore a bikini when she did, which incited him to sneak glances whenever he could at her slender, petite body. Proud of herself, she often wore revealing outfits, loving the attention he always provided in exchange. They had been married for over 15 years, yet she managed to maintain the same trim figure she had when they met, thanks to a modest regiment of daily walks, housework, and mostly healthy dieting. But Alice looked vaguely different this time. Squinting hard, Jeff swore she looked a little more solid than usual. Curious if something had actually changed about Alice, Jeff decided to go outside and investigate. As he approached, she remained completely engrossed in watering the flowers, moving with an energetic grace that he hadn't seen in her before. As the water splashed on a combination of flowers and vegetables, it glistened in the sunlight. He noticed an almost supernatural sparkling shimmering off of them. "This is one of the most beautiful days I can remember," he thought, paying little attention to the discoloration. Looking at Alice from behind, it became apparent to him that her back, which he had embraced thousands of times before, now featured lines of muscular definition previously absent. Glancing down, her waist seemed even trimmer than before, while her hips flared out a little wider than he remembered. He became excited at the sight of her rear, which had always been shapely and round, but now had a perky, idealized heart shape to it. Her legs looked sturdier than ever, lightly defined hamstrings bulging from them, while her calves now had diamond-shaped bumps without being flexed. Jeff swallowed as he took in Alice's full shape again, realizing that she also appeared to be a little taller. After getting his fill of examining her new body, he made his presence known with a warm welcome, which she reciprocated. He walked over to Alice, quickly kissing her on the cheek. "Garden looks great, hun," Jeff said. Glancing down at Alice's body, he noticed another change. Her slender arms seemed slightly more toned. He blinked, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him, but they were still definitely more muscular than he had ever seen them before. "Have you been secretly working out?" he asked, still unsure how he wouldn't have noticed the changes earlier that morning. Alice looked up at him with a curious expression. "Nothing more than usual," she replied, before looking down and noticing the same changes in herself. Holding the hose away from them both, she looked up at him and grinned before saying, "Maybe the yard work is giving me gains." She raised her right arm and flexed it, summoning a small but noticeable bicep. He reached up, gently squeezing it, feeling a strange, unknown sensation from touching the slightly wet arm. He let go, as if he were shocked. "Wow, is it that hard?" she asked with a cheeky smirk. He considered explaining that he felt something weird, but didn't want to alarm her. Instead, he summoned a playful smile and replied, "Whatever you're doing out here, keep it up. You look even more amazing than usual." Alice giggled before leaning up and kissing him on the lips briefly. "I'll try." While Alice turned away to water some hanging plants, he started pulling weeds in a flower bed near where she was watering. He worked much slower than usual, distracted from keeping watch of her from the corner of his eye. Alice turned to water the tomato plants, and she splashed some water across her upper body. He watched as over the next few seconds her slender arms thickened a little, new lines of muscular definition forming nearly instantly. Her bikini tightened as her breasts grew slightly, while her shoulders broadened a 1/4 inch. She reached up to spray the highest leaves of the trellis, some of the water falling down onto her torso. Moments later, a faint outline of ab muscles appeared, as if she had been doing crunches every day for months. Alice moved over to the cucumber vines, bending down to check on the small green cucumbers starting to grow. As she sprayed the leaves, water splattered onto her lower body. He watched in amazement as her thighs thickened before his eyes, gaining an inch of muscle in seconds. Her calves bulged out further, becoming visibly larger even from where he was crouched. She hummed as she gardened, oblivious to the changes subtly reshaping her figure with each splash of water. He swallowed hard, feeling arousal mixing with incredulity at her transformation. When Alice stood up, he swore she was an inch taller, her height coming closer to his own. She walked with a subtle sway to her hips now. Her rear had become full and round. the bikini bottom straining to contain it. She glanced down and seemed to finally notice the newest changes that he had been staring at. Still holding the hose in hand, she looked over at him with a mischievous look on her face before turning it towards herself, now deliberately dousing her body with more water. He gulped as Alice proceeded to completely drench herself from head to toe. As the water cascaded down her body, her muscle definition immediately deepened. Her shoulders widened while her traps rose up, becoming noticeably prominent. Her biceps and triceps swelled at least an inch larger, powerful split peaks forming in their centers. Thick pecs emerged above her breasts, which also grew another cup size. A 4-pack of abs etched onto her midsection as her waist narrowed until she looked like a cartoonish hourglass. He watched with awe as new lines formed in her legs that were absent before, while her hamstrings and glutes gained curve and shape, her rear becoming incredibly round and full. Her stature increased another couple of inches as her whole frame expanded, bare feet proportionately growing, requiring her to readjust her stance for balance. By the time Alice's latest growth spurt had finished, she looked like a professional fitness model from head to toe, all of the new definition accentuated by a shimmer of wet water on her body. He felt a combination of dread and excitement at what he was seeing. On one hand, Alice had become sexier than he ever imagined she could become. But on the other hand, he was afraid of her becoming stronger and more muscular than him. He slowly walked over towards Alice, who was now nearly as tall as him and in far better shape. His heart pounded as he looked at her, taking in the powerful and voluptuous new figure. "Alice, give me the hose," he said, attempting to sound authoritative. She grinned up at him, raising the hose above her head. "Why? I'm having too much fun." He reached up, grabbing onto the hose and trying to yank it from Alice's grasp. To his surprise and horror, she was now too strong for him to simply overpower. Instead, the hose remained firmly in her grip, but the struggle resulted in it spraying all over both of them from head to toe, drenching them. Surprised by the coldness of the water, he let go and backed up. He felt his muscles tingling all over. "Am I going to grow?" He wondered for a few anxious seconds. His question was answered, but not in the way he wanted or expected. All at once, he began to shrink. His muscles softened and deflated while his shoulders narrowed, arms thinning noticeably. His chest contracted, losing firmness and muscle tone. His perspective shrank down a couple of inches, clothes hanging more loosely on his frame. Alice grinned broadly as she felt her muscles swelling bigger once again. Her shoulders broadened further, widening past his original state, deltoids taking on a size he only dreamed of achieving. Her biceps bulged another inch larger, thick veins rippling down their sides. Her pecs swelled into thick slabs of muscle, while her breasts expanded again, becoming two perfectly round orbs that pushed her bikini top to its limits. Her abs grew more pronounced, now forming a clear 6-pack onto her stomach, while her obliques became prominently defined. As her lats widened, they tapered down to a still tiny waist, once again flaring out to incredibly broad hips, sitting above jutting hamstrings and calves bursting with muscle. Her bikini bottom was increasingly swallowed by her glutes, which were now perfectly round and rock hard at the same time. He looked up at Alice with a mix of arousal and intimidation. She now stood nearly a head taller than him, her muscles substantially larger than his own. Each of them looked sculpted to perfection. She radiated an aura of raw strength. She looked down at him with a cheeky smile, flexing her right bicep and making it jump. "Now this is a fun turn of events," she giggled while crunching her abs down while running her hands along them, her voice far louder and more powerful than he ever remembered it being. As he gazed upon Alice's new body, he felt the same weakness in his knees from when he first met her, now amplified 7-fold. He simply stood there, staring with awe at the hottest body he had ever seen in person. Alice casually held the hose in her hand, its magical waters directed away from them both. He was now completely at her mercy. All he could do is pray that she wouldn't abuse this newfound power. To be continued. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to be notified of future releases, leave a like, and comment below.